Modern education is object-oriented. So instead of focusing on the knower, we focus on the object that is to be taught. And it's the purpose of my study to try to figure out why we don't put more emphasis on focusing on the different aspects that make up the learner. There are lots of studies out there that study different things from socioeconomic status to family makeup to parenting styles, learning styles, but there's not something that looks at all of those in relationship to parent education levels. And it is the goal of my study to use parent education levels and see how those influence parenting styles, socioeconomic status, and thus the student success in the classroom. Many studies focused on socioeconomic status and family member dynamics. It was proven more often than not that students were more successful in the classroom if they came from two-parent households where financial stress was not a common occurrence. It was also determined that the average level of education attained by parents of such households was at least a bachelor's degree. There has been little work, however, on how factors like parental beliefs, such as achievement expectations or adequacy, might actually function as links between socioeconomic status and achievement outcomes in children. The studies that do exist typically examine young children in low-income or at-risk populations and focus on income-related components as the moderators and family stress as a mediator to achievement outcomes. It was concluded that families of lower socioeconomic status, especially single parents, tend to suffer from financial stresses which ultimately negatively affect student achievement. A more recent study conducted by Siren in 2005 arrived at a similar conclusion, but also found that the correlation between socioeconomic status and academic acquisition was lower for families who were minorities in comparison to families of European American background. As this correlation continues to present itself throughout the different studies, researchers have been attempting to move from analysis of child outcomes based primarily on classes of social status, or income, parental education, or occupational status, to ones that examine the processes behind these classes. Researchers Davis, Kine, and Sexton in 2005 suggest that although parent education is strongly related to income, it has a unique influence on parents' beliefs and behaviors. And that rather than looking at parent education as the control variable, we should instead delve into it and examine the family interaction patterns by which parents' level of education relates to child educational acquisition. This is the goal of my overall study. Although this is not realistic because I teach high school, I didn't have enough adolescent Barbies to represent high school students, so I decided to make an elementary classroom instead. But in order for my study to work properly, I would have to survey both my students and my students' parents. The survey would involve questions that I would generate after getting to know my students through maybe the first couple months of school, and then also having a parent-teacher conference with all of my parents to fill them in on what the study is set to accomplish. That way that I could ensure that parents answer honestly, and also try to ensure that my students also answer their survey honestly. Ultimately, it would be ideal if I can link parenting styles, socioeconomic status, learning styles in children, all to levels of education in parents, and see how the levels of education in parents can directly influence those factors.